Fire Ryan Day.
Are you done defending Ryan Day after he lost yet again versus a top 5 team?
Should Day be fired? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Ohio State fans have got to gain some perspective here.
And I think he's a very good coach, but if you can't lose that game. It's just that speaks for itself. And there's no alibiing, and he's got a new AD coming in, and Ryan Day, I'd get out of there. Why you can't?
That being said, I want to ask my Ohio State fans a question. This is a serious question. When is enough enough?
That's the hot topic amongst Ohio State football right now, is the firing of Ryan Day. Well, he hasn't been fired yet, but some people think he should be based off of the team's soulless performances recently and their seemingly inability to, outcoach major opponents. But there's always been one big question. If you fire Ryan Day, who are you going to get to replace him? So I did what any sensible person would do. I asked Reddit. And me and Franchise here are going to read the best answers and the worst ones. Yeah. Because why not? So let's get started. So before we talk about who could possibly replace him, I want to address one major concern that some guy on Reddit had. Firing Ryan Day would be freaking absurd.
Yeah, and that's not ridiculous to say. Ryan Day's done a great job at Ohio State by most people's standards. To the average college football fan, 62-9 overall. That's pretty good. But right now, I think Ohio State is holding Ryan Day to a much higher standard than the rest of the college football world does, because the last 3 seasons and about the first 8 weeks of this year, Ryan Day has left a lot to be desired. Haven't beat Michigan the last 3 years, and that's the number one. That's the number one goal for Ohio State. You got to win that last game. You got to win that game after Thanksgiving. If you don't win a single game the rest of the year, you better win that one.
Yeah.
That's prevented them from reaching all these other goals of winning a Big Ten title, winning a national championship, sometimes even blocking them from getting to the playoffs even. And then we see this year, obviously we haven't got to the Michigan game yet, but the game against Oregon, where just the defense just looked completely lifeless. Secondary's getting torched. There's no pass rush on the defensive line. And then the game against Nebraska, where the whole team just played uninspired football. I mean, this Penn State game coming up, a lot of people are saying Ryan Day's already coaching for his job. So I don't know if it's that far, but also 2-6 against top 5 opponents. Definitely a red flag here, but let's see how the rest of the season plays out too for Ohio State as well.
They go 9-3 and miss the playoffs, and it'll probably happen.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on how the Penn State and Indiana games go.
I feel like they could definitely lose one more and still get in.
Yeah.
But I think
Penn State would be the most likely answer. If they lose to Penn State, they're probably still in.
Yeah, and I do think that anything but winning out takes them out of the Big Ten title picture.
Yeah.
So they would be playing for an at-large at best if they have 2 losses. I think definitely Penn State is the most high risk, high reward game left on the schedule. Just given the magnitude of the game coming up this Saturday in Happy Valley.
That's what I think.
Wait, scroll back up. I wanted to read something. Imagine trying to find another coach after that. Yeah, you can be a national title contender every year, but if you don't win it, you're gone, Chief. I mean, here's the thing: is
I can think of 10 million reasons why a coach would want to come to Ohio State.
Well, here's the thing: is that yes, Ohio State through the regular season has been a national title contender, but if you're not if you're not in the last 4, if you're not one of the last 4 teams playing at the end of the season, you're not in contention.
Yeah.
And this year now it's 12, but still, I mean, if you're not in that final 12, then
you're done.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to play for.
Yeah. the Michigan losses, even though they still got in 22. I mean, 21 and 23, the Michigan game cost them a playoff berth.
Yeah, and they probably would have gotten in even if they had lost those games because they had a strong set. Like 23, I imagine they would have still made the playoffs.
Yeah, if the 12-team playoff was a thing, before this year, I don't think that game would have affected Ohio State as much. But again, it's just a matter of like knowing the situation and knowing what your team has to go do. And right now, Ryan Day just hadn't been able to get it done.
Yeah.
And I'll say this personally too, as an Ohio State fan, like I have full confidence in Ryan Day that he's going to be able to get it done. Like until like he doesn't, at least this year, like until Ryan Day doesn't get it done, if they would happen to lose enough games to not make the playoffs, or if they get to the playoffs and lose, that's when I lose my confidence. But like, the season's still going. There's still plenty of season left. A lot of big games left to be played. So definitely still aboard the. I don't know if I call it hype train, but I'm still in Ryan Day's corner as of now.
You're in his defense.
Yes. Now I will say like. I was definitely on like the Ryan Day hot seat train, way before. Like I think it was after the Michigan game in 21, where I was
the irrational. Let's get this guy out of here.
I wasn't saying fire the dude, but I was definitely a lot more concerned than the rest of the fan base was, because I was just thinking, okay, this team came out, they didn't look prepared at all. And I'm just starting to wonder, like, how seriously does Ryan Day take this rivalry in comparison to an Urban Meyer, to a Jim Tressel, to a Woody Hayes? If they lose to Indiana and Penn State and miss the playoffs, I think they will fire him, and I won't think it's absurd, especially with the talent they have and the money they spend specifically on this season. I don't think that's super likely to happen, but it's not impossible.
It really depends on how those Indiana and Penn State games go.
Yeah.
Like, if they lose, like that Oregon game was really close.
Yeah.
It could have gone either way, but also they could have lost it by a lot more.
Yeah.
So you think about that, like, first quarter, that completion that should have been ruled an interception, that just the amount of times that their defense got absolutely burnt. Like, it should have been worse, but also there were plays where they could have won the game. So I think if the Indiana and Penn State games go similarly, and it's close and they lose, I think Ross Bjork will sit down and have a conversation with Ryan Day and say, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
What do we need to figure out?
I feel like on the other hand, though, like if the game's close and they still lose, I feel like it could be a situation where, like, okay, we've been in this situation before where we're in position to win,
and he's getting outcoached by.
Why are we not able to get this done?
Yeah. There's zero chance they lose to Indiana and Penn State. I'll eat A pants if that happens.
Listen, this whole college football season has been full of people making ridiculous bets on Twitter, specifically one Florida State fan at the beginning of the season.
He just cursed the team.
Yeah,
he didn't eat the crap.
Yeah, and now the team's 1-7.
What do you think A pants quantifies?
I would
like a pair of pants.
I would say a pair of pants. I think that's what this guy was going for. Yeah.
What kind of pants would it be? It would be like.
I would just say like a good old pair of jeans.
Like devour a pair of jeans.
I feel like that's the most logical in this situation. A pants.
A pants. We're holding you to this. If they lose these games, we need to see you eating A pants.
Hey,
on Twitter.com.
You gotta send it to us personally.
Yeah. We'll give you our phone numbers. Send that to us. I think the only way that he actually gets fired is if he goes 8-4.
If he would lose to Michigan, I think that's grounds for firing.
They would revoke his card access the next day.
Well, especially with how down Michigan is this year. Like, Michigan is not the same Michigan that we saw the last 3 years under Jim Harbaugh. There's debate as to why that is, but what it comes down to is still Michigan's not the same Michigan of the last 3 years. Regardless, though, again, that rivalry game is still important. I think Michigan's going to come into Columbus that week wanting to win. They're going to come in, because I think the one thing that Michigan has that Ohio State doesn't is they understand the importance of the rivalry. But again, if Ohio State does not beat Michigan this season with how down Michigan has looked,
and especially with that $20 million roster,
yes,
that everybody's making fun of,
and at home too.
Yeah, and at home,
I feel like that would be grounds for firing.
I think if they win out except for Michigan, I think that's where the Ross Bjork conversation comes in that I talked about.
Yeah.
But if they go 8-4, if they drop Penn State and Indiana, and then they play like completely uninspired football against Michigan, like they're not letting him back into the Woody the next day.
Yeah.
Like there's no chance he's going to be gone. Like probably after the game.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about our thoughts on this whole Ryan Day situation. A lot of people have also chimed in and given their opinions. The main question is who replaces Ryan Day, and Reddit has some answers for us.
The best answers in the world come from Reddit. I heard Ohio State national championship winning coach Jim Tressel is available.
I mean, no, I want to.
This guy responded, "My guy is currently on the drinking a warm glass of milk and hitting the sack at 7:30 p.m. schedule."
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's that bad, but the man is pretty old. And then the next response is just bench him for the games against West Coast teams.
Just traveling to Autzen Stadium in October is like, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim Knowles, you got to be the head coach this week.
I think 10 years ago that would have been a little more reasonable. But Jim Tressel's been out of the coaching game since 2011, and I think he's pretty content to stay retired. I've actually seen the dude in person. Fun little story. So like my dad and I go to the state basketball championships every year.
Yeah.
And Jim Tressel was at the state tournament this year because he got like an Ohio Legacy Award or something like that. It was pretty cool. But the man looked pretty old. I mean, not bad, but it just doesn't look like somebody who would want to be coaching right now. And I think, too, just his style of coaching is far outdated for the current state of college football.
If I had to sit through an entire season of Tressel ball in 2025 I might hurt myself.
Yeah.
I barely survived in 2023.
I was 5 years old in 2008, but I just remember, like, my dad telling me, like, I think it was like after the year they played the national championship against Florida, when they had like Troy Smith and Ted Ginn and that whole team. Like after that, Tressel ball just became so painful to watch. And I saw an interesting tweet on Twitter. Ryan Day from 2021 to now, Jim Tressel from like 2007 to 2010, Urban Meyer from 2015 to 2018. Spot the difference.
I'm sure firing Day for 1-9-3 season and missing the playoffs would work out real well for Ohio State. Nothing bad can ever happen firing a 9-win coach. Thank you.
Yeah, that was said by a Nebraska fan, and
we very much appreciate your offering of Frank Solich.
Yeah,
as Ohio University students, we appreciate what you have done for our prestigious university.
Frank Solich was one, and then Nebraska let history repeat itself for whatever reason in firing Bo Pelini, because Bo Pelini at Nebraska, you're getting consistent like 9-3, 10-2, 9-4, 10-3. You know, like not national championship seasons, but good seasons. Like obviously, it's not great by Ohio State standards, but like. Those are a lot of programs would kill to have consistent 9 and 10 win seasons.
Yeah.
And then Nebraska lets Bo Pelini go. They haven't really had the same success since. But Nebraska fans, if you're watching this, your future's bright. I got a lot of confidence in Matt Rule. Just throwing that out there. But yeah.
I disagree. Your program is cursed. You are never going to win a national title.
I would love to see Nebraska football good again. Just
That'd
once.
be cool, but
Yeah,
if they
your
one-score games
your
like
fan
this.
base is too passionate for your team to suck year in year out.
We're rooting for you as Ohio students.
Yes.
Because you gave us Frank Solich, we will forever be in your favor. If they fire him, my initial thing is what happens to Brian Hartline, because I have to imagine a lot of schools would kill to have his services. As a wide receiver coach, like I don't think another school would poach him unless or not.
I think okay.
He would have to be promoted in order to go to another school.
I could be very wrong on this. But when Luke Fickell left Cincinnati to go to Wisconsin, which we'll talk about him later.
Brian Hartline was like
Brian Hartline
flew
like
to Cincinnati.
Well, yeah. Everybody because I grew up in Cincinnati. I still know a lot of people from living there. Like a lot of UC fans that I'm friends with were saying, "Oh, Brian Hartline's gonna be our next head coach. Brian Hartline's gonna take us to the promised land." And then like a week later, like I think Brian Hartline even interviewed with Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and
he took a private jet to Cincinnati.
He interviewed with Cincinnati, and then a couple days later, he was like, "I'm staying at Ohio State." Or there's a lot of programs that would want this guy as a head coach, and why wouldn't he? He's a great recruiter.
Yeah,
he's shown that he can be
incredible talent developer.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Ohio State wide receivers over the past how many years?
Wasn't he like associate offensive coordinator or something like that?
He's co-offensive coordinator. It says co-offensive coordinator seemingly in name only.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know what he does to earn that title.
I mean,
like it's Chip Kelly's job.
I definitely think like I don't think it would be necessarily like ridiculous to see him as a head coach. I mean, it was the same thing when Urban Meyer was suspended for 3 games and Ryan Day was our head coach, and we're like, okay, what's this just no name quarterbacks
what's
coach?
This dude gonna do?
And I mean, like
we're talking about him right now, like possibly losing his job.
Yeah, and I mean, he's done a great job like ever since he took over, but I think this would be like kind of a similar situation where like, you know, you have a proven coach, in Urban Meyer's case, a proven winner.
Yeah.
But you have a guy who's proven himself as one of the top coaches in college football out of a job, and then you replace him with somebody who's had minimal experience as an offensive coordinator. I feel like it could be a situation there, but I think it's definitely a more favorable solution than a lot of the other names that we're talking about right now.
There are some people saying that Brian Hartline should be the next Ohio State coach if Ryan, or at least an interim if they fire Day. I think in terms of like roster retention, because if you fire Ryan Day, like who's leaving? Like Julian Sands probably gone.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Jeremiah Smith's probably gone,
yeah,
and Ohio State cannot afford to lose.
Well,
player that's as electric as Jeremiah
that's
Smith.
the thing that I think would work out in Ohio State's favor if they go the route of Ryan Day out the door, Brian Hartline is the new head coach. I think Brian Hartline at the helm of the program, you'd be a lot more likely to keep.
You would have
Sands,
the
your Jeremiah
roster
Smiths.
retention that you would need as Ohio State.
Yeah,
because you don't want to go out and recruit, and you might lose like some commits. Like 2025, they have a solid class.
Yeah.
I don't think they lose Tavian St. Clair. That's a kid that, in my eyes, is just an Ohio State fan and wants to play for his favorite team. But like other recruits, like Naheem Offord, or like even looking further in the future, your Chris Henry Juniors are not going to come to Ohio State,
right?
If they have sort of this firing. So
Mike Vrabel.
Big Mike.
I don't know. This was a name. I mentioned this to you before we started. There was a handful of names that I thought would be good for a good fit to take over at Ohio State should Ryan Day get fired or just leave Ohio State. Because I was thinking about this after the Michigan game in 22. Mike Vrabel was on the list of those names, and I thought it would be a perfect hire. He played for Ohio State. He's from Ohio, understands the Michigan rivalry. He's got that aspect of it. He was an assistant under Urban for a while, and he was a really successful coach in the NFL too. Sometimes that doesn't translate, but I mean we saw it with Jim Harbaugh in going from the NFL to college. The thing that I came to realize with Mike Vrabel and the first response to this comment here kind of points that out is that Vrabel has expressed that he doesn't want to go back to coaching in college, especially again like we talked about with Jim Tressel, like just the current state of college football with recruiting, the transfer portal, NIL. I just feel like Mike Vrabel's not in for all that, and honestly, I mean, kudos to him. In today's college football, like, you have to be able to adapt with the times, and not that Mike Vrabel hasn't adapted with the times, but just after being in the NFL for so long too. Yeah. I think just that transition would be hard to make.
It's coaching in college and coaching in the NFL are two completely different animals. Not saying that coaching in college is more difficult, but you have to recruit. Yeah. You have to use NIL. You have to use the transfer portal. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do in college that, quite frankly, you don't have to do where you can delegate in the NFL. So I don't know if Mike Vrabel would be the best option for Ohio State. I think he'd be a good option in terms of, like, winning football games. But in terms of, like, talent acquisition, you're not going to win football games if you can't find people to hire. So
I like this sub comment right here. Vrabel went to Wisconsin for like a week with Fickle to hang out and opted to go coach the Browns as an analyst. If he wanted to be in college, Fickle would have made a spot for him to do anything he wanted.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think people kind of wanted Vrabel to take over the Browns when they weren't doing well. Yeah, but we're talking about people that are close to getting fired. Yeah, Kevin Stefanski is not close to getting fired at all. They're going to fire their quarterback before they fire their head coach.
We'll see about that. I'd like to know what one Mr. Grayson Wolf thinks if you're watching this.
Grayson, it's your quarterback. It's not your coach.
I didn't get to see Grayson today, so I should have asked him about it.
This Oregon fan said, "Fire up the groomers," and I responded, "Lanning is staying. If he won't take the Alabama job, he's most definitely not leaving for Ohio State."
Yeah. I couldn't see Dan Lanning, especially with Oregon being in the Big Ten. I couldn't see Dan Lanning leaving to come to Ohio State.
And Oregon has the best NIL situation
for sure
in college football.
For sure.
Like, Phil Knight is going to throw his inheritance at the program. Like, he's respectfully to Phil Knight, he's very old. He wants to see a national championship before he dies. He's got some $38 billion in the bank. He will probably throw all $38 billion of that at Oregon. Screw his children and his inheritance. All of that money is going to the University of Oregon Athletics Fund.
Did Mario Cristobal get fired from Oregon, or did he just straight up leave?
He might have left for Miami. Let's find out.
Yeah.
He
left in 21 before the Alamo Bowl and took the Miami job. It's not as good of a situation as Oregon's in right now, and Miami's having a great season. Don't get me wrong, but as far as the long term goes with, like, recruiting and stuff, I get, again, like, a lot of recruits want to play in Miami because South Beach and just all the vibes of Miami.
Miami Gardens is a party town.
But again, Oregon's got all the money. They have the Nike money, the NIL deals, all that good stuff.
Phil Knight threw out a lot of money this offseason.
So
he went and got Dylan Gabriel. He got Evan Stewart.
But if he didn't leave to go to Alabama, I mean, I don't see why he'd leave Oregon for Ohio State.
Do you think that Alabama was the best job that college football will ever see, or do you think that if the Ohio State job opens up, it'll be the best job in college football? Because following up Nick Saban was never going to be easy.
I think if Oregon ever would open up down the road, that would probably be the best.
If Phil Knight's still alive.
Yeah, yeah. I think right now, Alabama opening up was like, I think it was the best job, but it was also just like, I'm not saying people didn't want it, but also it was just like, it was the most like, it was the riskiest job in college football too, because
you got to follow up the greatest coach to ever do it.
It's like
the most decorated, most championships.
That's how I feel about, like, if I was on the 1999 Chicago Bulls, like the year after Michael Jordan retired, I would have been like, what am I even doing here? Like, you
gotta leave.
I'm replacing I'm replacing the greatest basketball player of all time, Curt Cignetti.
The next comment here says, if he were younger, maybe. Dude's pushing 65, and I have a feeling he sees Indiana as his last coaching destination.
Wait, how old is the man? Oh, dang. Okay. Yeah. So the dude is 63.
Kyle Whittingham isn't even that old, and he's on his way out.
I agree that if he were younger, it'd be a good move. Also, the thing is, too, yes, he's having a really good season in Indiana, but he hasn't really proven that he can win at a big level consistently. Like, it's only his first year.
Yeah, he's had only one season, and he was the coach at James Madison before that, who just moved up to the FBS. So,
I like the description of his picture on Wikipedia.
He wins. I'll put that on the screen if you can't see that. He wins. I think the thing about Curt is that he's had a great season, but he's had one season, and he hasn't really played anybody yet outside of Nebraska. I think Nebraska is the best team they played. But if he had another 2 or 3, like if Tom Allen, when he had a good season with Indiana in 2020, if he continued that for a couple of years, we'd be sitting here saying, give Tom Allen.
Indiana's 4 remaining games. They're at Michigan State this Thursday. Wow. This Saturday.
Yeah.
Trap game, potentially?
They'll probably win. I think they win. If they have work, at quarterback, they'll win.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We love Curtis work. Indiana's last 4 games at Michigan State, Michigan at home, at Ohio State, which one of us might be going to, by the way, and then Purdue. So I think it's very reasonable that Indiana finishes 11-1.
It's also possible they finish 12.
They could very well.
If we're in this hypothetical scenario that Ryan Day gets fired, that means they've probably finished 12.
They very well could finish 12-0. I think it'd be a good first season for Curt Cignetti, especially with the signature win against Ohio State. But again, the question is, can he do it consistently? And you can't do something consistently for only 1 year.
If the job is open this season, I don't want Cignetti to be the head coach. I need to see more out of him.
Yeah.
Especially with the roster turnover that we're probably going to have. I don't want Curt Cignetti as the Ohio State coach.
These next couple responses are kind of funny. I don't know how seriously I should take them.
Chip Kelly. No. I'm sorry. No. Oh, no. Please don't take Lincoln Riley. That would make me so sad. No. I don't want him.
You can have him.
You can have him.
I will say this: if Lincoln Riley would be Ohio State's head coach, then Julian Sand is winning the Heisman. That's the positive that comes out of that.
He's winning the Heisman, going number 1 overall,
and Ohio State would finish 8-5.
Miss the playoffs.
Yeah,
8-5.
I hear Jimbo Fisher's available. No,
we're not gonna spend any more time on this.
Again, this is another thing though, with the same thing I said about Jim Tressel. If this was maybe 10 years ago, I'd consider it a little more.
Coming off of a national championship with Florida State, yeah, definitely. But no. Greg Schiano.
I would just like to read the sub comment to this. Knowing our luck, he'd take the job, then become better than Nick Saban and Bill Belichick in their primes.
Is Rutgers that bad? Is that cursed?
Well, listen. I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano. He was a great defensive coordinator for Ohio State. He has been the only person that I know that can win at Rutgers. Because he did it back when Rutgers...
He's winning with Ethan Kaliak-Manis.
He did it when...
Do you understand how difficult that is to do?
I mean, he did it when Rutgers was in the Big East. They weren't winning national championships or anything, but they weren't the cellar dwellers of the conference. We saw them when they first joined the Big Ten. Rutgers is a hard place to win, and I think Greg Schiano is great for Rutgers football. But I don't think he would be a good fit for a job like Ohio State.
He's good for Rutgers and only Rutgers. I don't think he could take a bigger job than that.
Wait, didn't he coach the Buccaneers at one point?
Yeah, he coached the Bucs and he was awful.
Yeah.
He told his guys to go 100% on a kneel down play.
Okay.
He was like, "Go get the quarterback."
Where
the game was over.
Where I gained respect for Greg Schiano as a head coach is in 2020, the COVID season, when this dude is coaching against Ohio State for the first time.
Oh, that game was
this dude was pulling out every trick play known to mankind, and Ohio State just had no answer. Like
he pulled every possible stop
that infuriated me. But looking back on it, I was like, that was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So Greg Schiano's a head coach, is 91 and 99 overall. In 2 stints at Rutgers. He coached the Buccaneers from 2012 to 2013.
Bad tenure.
Did he even make it through the entire second? Yeah, he made it through 2 whole seasons. Finished last place in the NFC South both times. But
that's hard to do.
His second stint at Rutgers, he has led them to 2 bowl appearances, which for Rutgers standard, that's pretty good.
That's like winning a national championship.
Although 2021 they got into the Gator Bowl because Texas A&M couldn't play, so I don't know if they really earned that. But they won the Pinstripe Bowl last year. They're 4-4 this season.
They started 4-0. These past 4.
I mean, so their last 4 games have been Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, USC. Not the easiest 4-game stretch, but they end the season with Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan State.
I can see them winning.
I could see them finishing 6-6
and making it. I think a bowl berth is definitely in sight for them. But
yeah, for sure.
He's not. I don't think he's an Ohio State caliber.
No, but a lot of respect for Greg Schiano and what he's been able to do at Rutgers.
All right, this guy put together like a solid list of guys. Mike Vrabel was one of them. Luke Fickell, Wisconsin's head coach right now.
So.
He was the interim in 2011, and they were terrible.
Which I mean, I don't really fault Luke Fickell for that.
Yeah, me neither.
Because he took over the program in like July that year, and there
it was a program in turmoil.
Yeah,
they had just coming off Tattoo-gate, and it was his first time coaching.
And I mean, they started off the season. They started off the season a little shaky, but they were 5-3 at one point, and then they lost 4 of their next. For their next.
They
5.
finished 6-7.
Yeah,
I know that
because I remember watching. I think that was the first year that I watched every Ohio State football game. So kind of a bad year for me to start doing that. Yeah. I was talking to Noah before we started, and after the 2022 Michigan game, on that short list of guys I thought would be fit to replace Ryan Day. Luke Fickell was on that list because at the time he was. Your session is about to expire.
Oh no.
Dang it, Reddit.
Oh, that's not even Reddit. That's my Ohio Student Center.
Oh. Luke Fickell was on a short list of guys that I thought would be fit to take over at Ohio State should Ryan Day be fired. At the time he was coming off leading Cincinnati to a college football playoff appearance.
That was impressive.
Well, no, and
take a group of 5 teams to a 4-team playoff is crazy.
Watching like the progression of the Luke Fickell era at Cincinnati. His first year he was 4-8, and then the next year was 2018. I think they went like 9-3. And
they were good. They kept
went,
getting better.
They went,
and then they made it to the playoff. They went to a New Year's 6 game.
Hold on.
Because 2020 they barely lost to Georgia in the Peach Bowl.
I remember. They should have won that too.
And then they went.
What is it with teams from Ohio playing Georgia in the Peach Bowl and barely losing? So 2018 he goes 11-2. They beat Virginia Tech in the Military Bowl. 2019 they go 11-3. They made it to the AAC championship game. Won the Birmingham Bowl against Boston College. 2020 and 21 were probably the best years ever in Cincinnati football ever. 2020 in a shortened COVID season, 9-1, won the AAC, lost to Georgia in the Peach Bowl. 2021, they went 13-1, won the American.
They were undefeated at the time when they made the playoffs. They won the American undefeated. And you can't fault them for losing to Alabama.
And I mean, they had the win against Notre Dame that got them into the playoffs too. Which I mean, again, like you take that Notre Dame game, you take away that Notre Dame win, and they probably don't get in.
It's probably
in 2022 they went 9-3. A lot of Cincinnati fans say that last game of the year Fickell already had his foot out the door. We don't know yet, but I was all for Luke Fickell becoming the next head coach at Ohio State before he took over at Wisconsin. He's kind of struggled a little bit at Wisconsin. He's done a lot better this year, I would say, or at least
he hasn't had like the level of I don't think he had.
Well, because
no, he did have Braylon Allen for a year. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like,
but he hasn't had the level of roster that like Paul Chryst.
I'm not. But right now, Wisconsin sits at 5-3, losses to Alabama, USC, who at the time was ranked 13th, and Penn State. So
they almost won that game.
I mean, 3 ranked losses too.
That's not bad.
Yeah, they finish off the season at Iowa. They get Oregon at home in 2 weeks, and then Nebraska and Minnesota.
I can see them splitting those. 7-5 bowl berth.
Yeah, but I know Wisconsin fans and alumni haven't been too happy with how Luke Fickell has coached in 2 years at Wisconsin. I wouldn't be too upset if Ohio State brought him in. I don't think it would be the best hire, but it would be something where I'm like, yeah, I can get by with this.
Yeah.
It would definitely be something where he's got to prove himself and do it quick.
Marcus Freeman. If Ohio State fires Ryan Day just to hire Marcus Freeman, I would lose my mind.
So Marcus Freeman was the third man on my list in 2022. By the way, don't ask me how I remember this. Just by muscle memory.
This guy was ready. He came here prepared.
I was ready. I was ready for this moment 2 years later, guys. I don't think Marcus Freeman is a bad head football coach.
He's not. I don't think he's an Ohio State level football
My thing
coach.
is that okay? We dog on Ryan Day for being able to beat the nobodies, but then get to the big games and choke. Marcus Freeman, for whatever reason, is the exact opposite because he's beaten like Clemson and all like the ranked teams like USC.
They'll beat Clemson, USC.
He's been able to win. He's been able to win the big games, but then
you have Northern Illinois.
You have the Marshall loss. You lose to 4-8 Stanford. It just these games that you should be winning with ease, and they just can't. They struggle in those games. I think for me it's a situation kind of similar to Luke Fickell where like I wouldn't be totally against it, but I would be like, you've got to prove yourself fast here. The advantage that Marcus Freeman has too is that
he's a former Ohio State player.
He played for Ohio State. He's been pretty favorable towards Ohio State outside of like when Ohio State has played Notre Dame. Like I remember like College Game Day 2 years ago. When they were in Columbus for the Michigan-Ohio State game. And Notre Dame was playing USC later that night, and College Game Day did a phone call with Marcus Freeman. And Marcus Freeman is literally walking down the beach in L.A. Talking about how much he wants the Buckeyes to win against Michigan. So, I mean, I would like it from that aspect. Again, like, I think with Fickell and Freeman both, like, it would be a situation where I would like it because they're familiar with the program. They understand the Michigan rivalry. I just don't know if they've proven enough to, for me to
lock up a job.
And again, like if we were
this big of a job,
I think with Mike Vrabel, Luke Fickell, and Marcus Freeman, I think if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, if Ryan Day had been fired, I would have said those three easily. But obviously now. Things are a lot different.
There's not many coaches I would take over.
I would have taken, and Marcus Freeman too is the thing with like, it's kind of like the same thing we talked about with Brian Hartline. Great defensive coordinator. He was great at Cincinnati as a defensive coordinator. Did a lot for their recruiting when he was an assistant under Luke Fickell. He was great at Notre Dame the 1 year he was defensive coordinator.
And then he got promoted to head coach after Brian Kelly left for LSU.
Yeah,
and he's left a little bit to be desired. I mean, like you've said, they've lost those like games that they should be winning. It'd be kind of like Urban Meyer all over again. He'd win the. I don't.
Yeah,
he struggled in some of the big games.
I feel like it'd be a little worse, because like at least Urban Meyer was like we weren't losing to like MAC schools. Like
we were losing to Big Ten.
We were losing
also,
to teams
I don't blame Ohio State for the Purdue game. Like that was the Tyler Trent game.
Yeah, no.
Like I don't necessarily blame
well,
them.
I saw like the one guy on TikTok that said like I knew we were screwed when they interviewed Tyler Trent before the game.
I don't hold it against Ohio State. Kind of like some other Urban Meyer losses, just because of that. But also with Marcus Freeman, like I don't want to be losing to.
And I would
love for Ohio State to lose to Ohio next year.
Okay,
that would be great.
Okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm gonna ask you a question. So Notre Dame is 7-1. They've got a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way.
He's gonna do what he can with his legs. No, he will throw. Lobs it to the end zone. Touchdown! Devin Smith.
And let's just say that Notre Dame wins a national championship and Ryan Day is gone from Ohio State. If you're Ohio State, do you make a pitch to Marcus Freeman?
I'm pretty sure there's 3 active coaches right now that have a national title. If Marcus Freeman wins one, it'll be 4. Because the other 3 are Kirby,
Smart,
Mac Brown, and
Dabo.
If Marcus Freeman wins the national championship, becomes the 4th, that's probably my first call.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if I'm Ohio State, my first call is to Dan Lanning, even though he's gonna say no.
Yeah.
If Marcus Freeman wins a national championship, he's the first call.
Yeah.
If not, he's the second call.
I'm not saying Notre Dame will win the national championship because I don't, but I mean, they're 7-1. Obviously, the Northern Illinois loss hurts, but if they win out, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they've got a chance.
I mean, they play Florida State, Virginia, Army, which right now they're ranked. So if they keep that up, like that'd be a big ranked win for their playoff resume. And then at USC, which I mean,
USC is a better team than we give them credit for.
Yes.
They just have some really bad losses.
And I feel like that could be a trap game for Notre Dame.
I think they're one of the 25 best teams in the country. I think they just have too many losses for the voters to say we're going to rank them.
I would say if we get to a scenario where Ryan Day is gone from Ohio State after this year and Marcus Freeman wins a national championship at Notre Dame, I think you at least got to give him a call.
Yeah, he's got to be your first call.
And I don't know how
a
likely he'd be to take it because, again, like you don't see too many coaches that win a national championship and then leave, like right after.
Well, Jim Harbaugh, but he went to the NFL.
Okay, well that's
Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL.
Okay,
that's different.
That's a little different.
That's different.
Why wasn't I thinking of that?
Okay. If you're Ohio State, your first call, even though he's going to say no, is Kirby Smart. He's not going to take the job,
not leaving Georgia.
But you're gonna call him and be like, "Hey,
Kirby Smart's not leaving Georgia."
Just asking you, do you want to coach at Ohio State? Even if he immediately hangs up on you, you gotta try.
If Ohio State was in the SEC, then that might be a little more likely. But that's obviously not happening.
Big Ten's adding talent. Good. Matt Campbell and Chris Kleiman.
The one thing I'll say about Matt Campbell, my favorite Matt Campbell memory, was last year when Iowa State comes here to Athens and the Bobcats sent them packing. Iowa State's going into the tunnel and there's a fan standing by Iowa State's tunnel going, "Hey, coach, you on the hot seat, boy?" That Iowa State game last year was like a top 3 experience of my time at OU.
If that Iowa State game doesn't happen, you don't hold up the sign in the midweek action game and get on ESPN.
Hey, if you know, you know. I don't see either of these happening. I don't really know enough about Chris Kleiman to give a valid opinion on him. He hasn't been bad at Kansas State. I mean, he won the Big 12 with them 2 years ago. But I just don't think he's fit for an Ohio State type job yet. And kind of the same with Matt Campbell. I mean, he's had really good Iowa State teams. Yes.
He had a dry spell in the middle, but now he's got his job security back.
I just don't know if that would translate to a job like Ohio State.
I wouldn't necessarily complain if either of these two guys are hired. I think they've done a lot with a little talent. I think especially Matt Campbell. He's done a lot at Iowa State, even though he's had bad losses to teams like Ohio.
And the thing about Matt Campbell that you get with same guys like Luke Fickell, Marcus Freeman, Brian Hartline. He's from Ohio, Massillon-Jackson grad. He I would like to imagine he grew up a Buckeye fan. But either way,
he would probably take that job.
Either way,
like an Ohio guy.
Yeah. And growing up in Ohio, you understand like how big Ohio State football is around the state. You understand that beating Michigan is important. I just don't know if like on a national contention level, what he would bring to the table. But definitely wouldn't be complaining if Matt Campbell was the next Ohio State coach. Should Ryan Day be out the door? And
I'd be curious to see what he does with more talent.
Yeah, and then like I said, I just don't really know enough about Chris Kleiman to give a fair judgment there. So right now, I'm just gonna say no.
All right, let's not spend a lot of time on this one. Deion Sanders.
Oh gosh,
that culture would be something.
I'm just gonna say it right now. I wouldn't hate it.
It would be really funny.
I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it until we got guys. Oh, where I would draw the line is when Deion forces the band to replace Carmen, Ohio, with Shadur Sanders' theme song.
Bust out my AP, perfect timing.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. Got them baguettes.
We don't play Carmen. And we play perfect timing.
I would cry.
I might be a bigger Ohio fan.
I will read the comment to as censored as I possibly can. Gosh, I effing hate the culture that Deion has created. But watching just a few seasons of him at a powerhouse team would be effing hilarious. I might just forget about hating him first.
I would love if he were at a powerhouse school if it wasn't Ohio State.
Yes.
Okay, one thing's for sure though, they're never losing to Michigan again if they hire Deion Sanders. It's gonna be like the Michigan State rivalry where they're like physically fighting each other. Like after the game, Ohio State is gonna BTA.
That's what this Ohio State team needs though. Is like they just need a little bit of firepower because like I just feel like Ohio State doesn't hate teams like they used to.
He's doing decent at Colorado. I think he's got too much baggage to be the Ohio State head coach.
I don't even know how to pronounce this, but he's got Georgia and Cal Poly tagged. I'm available at $10 million a year with only a $50 million buyout. I currently have 0 losses as a head coach to top 10 teams.
By that logic, does that mean that we're both candidates for the Ohio State job?
It doesn't mean we're not.
We don't have any losses to top 10 teams. We don't have any bad losses either. Ohio State, hit us up. There is only one Bobby Petrino.
You didn't even put this on your list either. Bobby Petrino, I don't really have a lot to say about him, but he's not Ohio State good. If you're on the road, watch out for an old dude flying down 71 on a motorcycle.
Just imagine Bobby Petrino on 315 North and on a motorcycle with like some sorority girl
with the neck brace.
Oh, no.
I'm crossing the line a little bit.
He would jump ship to some other team after like 2 seasons. So if Bobby Petrino got hired as the Ohio State head coach, I'm not a fan anymore.
He would leave to go to like freaking Bowling Green or somewhere. Imagine leaving Ohio State to go to a MAC school. Like there would have to be some serious blackmail going on for that to happen.
I mean, hey, if we theorize that if we all chipped in like $100, we could get Ryan Williams to transfer here.
This is a real discussion that we've all had before.
How many students are on campus at OU? If we all chip in, we can get Ryan Williams
and see
enough NIL money.
And see, the thing is
to transfer here.
The sad thing is that Bama would still probably offer more just because it's Alabama. Kentucky is having a down year, but Mark Stoops would be a pretty good option, assuming he can hire a real offensive coordinator. I think Mark Stoops he's a really good coach. And this is going to sound crazy to say because he's coached in the SEC for so long. I just don't think he's Ohio State. because you know, again, like coaching the SEC is like very hard as is, but
he doesn't have a big time program in the SEC. That's like you have to win
I feel like
10 games a year or you're gone.
He's taken Kentucky from like the laughing stock of the SEC to like a team where like if you see them on your schedule, like you're saying
you have to like
you have to take them
it.
seriously.
You can't just go, oh, it's Kentucky, it's a free win. You have to take them seriously. Yeah. But I don't think
but
he's had some good teams. He almost took the A&M job, but
yeah, I do remember that.
I don't think he's Ohio State worthy, to be honest. I think that we need to see better and more from him.
I didn't realize that they got their wins vacated from 2021.
For what?
Playing ineligible players.
What's wrong with ineligible players?
I don't know.
The unknown and worrying part is Bjork. 2 decades of AD stability is something unheard of. What I'm getting at is Bjork has his own methodology for a coaching search. This isn't Gene Smith, who valued/relied on Ohio connections. Bjork likes the flashy hire, just going based off the Jimbo
cluster truck.
Yeah, we'll call it that. Maybe he'd lock up Lane Kiffin with a lifetime contract. Lane Kiffin, I think, wants the Florida job, but honestly, I don't know if they're going to fire Billy Napier.
I would definitely be on board with Lane Kiffin coming to Ohio State. Not saying like if Ryan Day is fired this season that he's the first guy I want. He's the first guy on my list.
The first couple guys I want are not going to take the job.
But if Ohio State would end up with Lane Kiffin as head coach, like I would be happy about that. Lane Kiffin's done a stellar job at Ole Miss. Definitely redeemed himself on the college landscape after like the disasters of Tennessee and USC.
Oh boy.
But he's definitely brought Ole Miss back from the dead. Not having the year that we all thought this year, but it's definitely an outlier to the success he's had ever since he took over.
And again, Ohio State has more talent than Ole Miss.
And
it really depends on like talent that you have. I wonder how many of these coaches would be better with
Lane Kiffin is a proven recruiter.
And come to the SIP. And that's his whole thing.
And he's got a lot of really good NIL connections too, which has helped him a lot. And he knows how to utilize the transfer portal. Honestly, I mean, if Lane Kiffin is the next guy for Ohio State, like I'm on board with that.
Yeah. And he's cool too. Like he's a cool guy.
Yeah, and I think
I would want Lane Kiffin to be the head coach just because like what he brings to the program.
I think the culture he'd bring too, especially for like the guys coming in. I think it would be just something that Ohio State would need should they go to a coaching change. I think Lane Kiffin is a good guy for that. So
I think Lane Kiffin would be the guy that would be able to like have the most roster retention if he came to Ohio State. Outside of like any of the Ohio guys, like Hartline or Vrabel. I think if you hire Lane Kiffin, I think Jeremiah Smith might stay. All right, this is the last comment we're going to look at. No one is firing him, but I'd love to see OSU throw Clark Lee a bag and see what he can do with that roster talent. This is another scenario, it's like similar to Cignetti, where I don't think he's shown enough to be like an Ohio State level head coach. Like he's having a really good season with Vanderbilt.
I think it's the same situation that I said with Greg Schiano at Rutgers. Like he's having a great year for Vanderbilt, but
he's done a lot with that roster, and he's beat Alabama, who is. I would argue they're a pretty good team. He almost beat Texas, who was a very good team.
They're on track for their first winning season since he's been there because his first 3 years he went 2-10, 5-7, and 2-10. Definitely a great turnaround. Trying to pull up the rest of their schedule.
Honestly, I think that he would really he has a high ceiling if he would be the Ohio State coach.
Vanderbilt ends the season at Auburn, South Carolina, at LSU, and Tennessee.
I think that's 2-2.
I
could definitely see them winning one of those.
I think they finish 7-5. I definitely don't rule out them going 6-6 because no matter how good Auburn is, that's always a tough place to play.
Same thing with South Carolina.
Yeah, but at least they got that game at home.
I can definitely see them winning one of the LSU or Tennessee games.
I feel like
Tennessee at home.
I feel like of the two, Tennessee is probably the most likely that they win.
Nico would have to have a really bad game, though.
Yeah,
for them to.
Also, just from what I know, Tennessee fans are overtaking that stadium. At least from what I know. Well, I mean, even
it really depends on how they're doing because Vanderbilt's good this year.
Well,
I wonder if the fans will show out.
I mean, well, here's the thing: is like, I just know from like, my parents lived in Nashville for a little bit, and they said like, my dad said that Vanderbilt could go undefeated and win a national championship, and the Vols would still run Nashville. Like it's like the Lakers and the Clippers. Like if
that's fair. That's fair.
Again, Clark Lee, similar situation to what I said about Greg Schiano. Like he's doing fine for where he's at, but I just wouldn't be sold on him at a big program like Ohio State.
I'll have to disagree. I'd be interested.
Okay.
I think he'd be one of the guys that I think he'd have a really high ceiling, especially with the Ohio State talent. I just think it'd take a little bit. But I can definitely imagine a world where Ohio State head coach Clark Lee is taking them to their second straight national championship game.
And I mean, I think you have a valid point. Like, you know, you could throw anybody in that head coaching spot with the talent that Ohio State has, and they could find a way to win, just with how talented that group is. But obviously we know that's too easy. That would just be too easy. If Clark Lee were to be the Ohio State head coach, I just don't know like if Jeremiah Smith is still there, if Julian Sain is still there, if Caleb Downs is still there.
And that's the thing is that Ohio State cannot afford to lose, like in particular Jeremiah Smith, because at this rate he is going to be the best wide receiver in school history.
Yes.
And he's going to be one of those guys that's like T-Mac at Arizona. Yeah. Like, you can just throw it to him, and he'll probably win you a couple games. All right, so we've gone over what Reddit thinks. Then we'll both share a coach in particular that we had in mind, and then we'll kind of wrap it up by talking about who we'd rather have over Ryan Day. So I'll start. I think a guy here that wasn't mentioned that I'd like to see as the Ohio State head coach if they fired Day, Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. He's done a fantastic job with that team. Obviously, they've got guys like Brady Cook. They had Cody Schrader last year, Luther Burden, guys like Theo Weiss. I'd be really interested to see what he does with the Ohio State roster, especially because they beat Ohio State last year in a bowl game. Like, I know Ohio State wasn't at their full potential. Yeah, it was the worst game I've ever seen them play in my life. That's the thing. That's the thing I'll say about this real quick is that like. You talk to any Ohio State fan about that game, they'll say the game doesn't count. You talk to any Missouri fan about that game, and they'll say it's the biggest win in school history. Yeah. I think if you throw Drinkwitz a bag, he would be one of my first calls for Ohio State. I would definitely
I could see
if I get a notification saying that Ohio State is hiring Eli Drinkwitz, I'm a happy man. Yeah. I agree with that. He's a guy that I would want to coach.
I think if we were having this conversation last year at this time, a name that I would have maybe considered, not saying that he would have been the guy, but a name that I would have considered a little more would have been Lance Leipold from Kansas. Because I mean, we saw how he built. Obviously, it's kind of he's kind of undid his progress this year. But the way he built Kansas back was very impressive. I don't think I would go with him now.
Definitely not. After seeing the season Kansas having.
Yeah, no.
I can't.
If this guy were to be the next Ohio State head coach, I don't know how excited I would be about it, but I would definitely be intrigued if they would make a move on this guy, and that is Pat Narduzzi from Pitt.
He's having a really good season. He's undefeated with Eli Holstein. He's broken out.
He's done for the talent that he's been given at Pitt. Which, I mean, like, yes, he had the team with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, but, like, just with what he's been given at Pitt, he's been tremendous. Really, really good defensive-minded coach. Again, you have the whole recruiting thing where, like, I don't know if Jeremiah Smith and, like, all these other guys would stay if Pat Narduzzi would come to Ohio State, but I think it'd be a really good move. I feel like it would be kind of similar to, like, the early Urban years where, like, you know, maybe you're not winning in the prettiest fashion, but you're still winning. And, like, you know, I think Pat Narduzzi does a good – the similarity I see with Pat Narduzzi and Urban Meyer is that they both do a good job doing less or doing more with less. And I feel like in the case of Ryan Day, although he's had phenomenal seasons by a lot of people's standards, he's been doing less with more. You know, I'd much rather have a coach that can do more with less, which is what we saw for about the first half of Urban Meyer's tenure at Ohio State. Again, if Ryan Day's out the door in Columbus and Pat Narduzzi is the guy, he's also familiar with the Big Ten because he was a longtime assistant at Michigan State too. If Pat Narduzzi would be the next head coach at Ohio State, I'm not saying I would be bouncing off the walls excited for it, but I definitely think it'd be a lot favorable move than a lot of the guys that we've talked about on this list. Although I think looking at it right now, I think if Ryan Day is gone at Ohio State, I think of the guys we talked about, I would say Brian Hartline, Lane Kiffin, Matt Campbell, and then Pat Narduzzi, probably in that order.
But kind of to wrap this up, I
thank you to whoever posted that Photoshop of Pat Narduzzi in Ohio State jersey or uniform on Twitter. Thank you for giving me that idea.
So the real question with these guys is how many of them would you take over kind of the stability that you have with Ryan Day? Like, he's 62-9 as Ohio State's head coach. He's done a good job, but he just hasn't been able to win the big games. If you're Ohio State and you're firing him, you better have somebody that's going to win the big games.
And again, that's one thing you got to be careful with is, like, you're one bad hire away from being a consistent 7-5, 6-6.
You're one bad hire away from being Nebraska.
Yeah.
Because they fired
Texas
Solich. They fired Solich. Yeah, Texas A&M. Because they fired Solich. They fired Pelini. I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, this is a big high-risk, high-reward move because you're getting rid of Ryan Day, who, to his credit, I think that Ryan Day can win a national championship if he's got the right guys around him. Mm-hmm. I don't think he has the right offensive line coach around him.
Yeah.
I think they need to do better recruiting there. I think they need to – So my computer really does not want us to finish this video. We've had my phone camera decided it wanted to stop working, and then I ran out of storage space.
You're just gonna have to deal with us finishing the video, dude.
Yeah, on this horrible webcam, like 720p quality.
Hey, don't let this distract you from the fact that the rest of our video is a banger, and from the fact that. In 2016, Michigan blew a 17-7 lead against Ohio State. JT was long.
And also, the Warriors blew a 3-1 lead against the Cavs. I guess to wrap this up, which of these coaches would you take over the stability that you have with Ryan Day?
As far as stability goes, I mean, again, there's only a handful of coaches that you can point out, and that would be guys like Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart. Those guys aren't leaving their current jobs.
Yeah.
So again, like, I would go out of the guys we talked about. I would probably venture to say Brian Hartline, Matt Campbell. Those guys.
I think I would definitely take those guys if Day were to be fired, but I don't know if I'd rather have them than Day.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
the stability that he brings.
No, I get what you're saying.
The stability that he brings, like, there's a very select few amount of coaches that I'd rather have than Ryan Day, and I don't think any of them are, like, going to take the Ohio State job if it's offered to them.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Ryan, congratulations.
We found your replacement.
Which is nobody.
Yet.
Because neither of us are on the coaching scene yet. Once we're there, you're in trouble. Other than that, I think that's all we really have.
Yeah.
I don't think that, honestly, Ryan Day can – I don't think there's a coach out there that's going to replace the production and the wins that he's got, even if there's going to be some losses. It's a competitive rivalry against Michigan. Big games are hard to win for a reason. I think if you give him a couple more years, put the right staff around him, I think he's the guy. And I think what we've proved here today and what Reddit has been saying all along, firing him would be absurd.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Thanks, franchise, for joining me today. And if you're curious, watch that game, September 25th, 2021, UTEP against New Mexico.
You won't regret it.
You won't. For Carson Francis, I'm Noah Devine. Have a good one, everyone.
Roll Buckeyes.
Hotel here, getting some rest. We're waking up early and heading over to the stadium. I think, our guys, are really cherishing this opportunity. There's a lot of guys in this bus here that have played in that game before. And really impressed.
What did you guys learn?
The time we spent together, I wish it was forever.
Upfield has time, launches downfield, it's Olave, he's got a touchdown, Ohio State! To the Tigers, throws off the back foot to the end zone, and it's intercepted on the carry. It's Seven Banks, and Banks. Very few Ohio State fans able to witness this. Get about half of the 3,000 tickets. Everyone here tonight on their side will save this memory forever.